We're back trying out some new Bloom Barrel commanders. Today, Mark's playing Bello, Bard of the Brambles, hoping to swing out with his artifacts and enchantments. Beto's playing Zoraline Cosmos Caller, looking to get extra mileage from his 3 CMC permanents. I'm playing Zinnia, Valley's Voice Flying Tribal. And last up is Bardo, playing Kellan the Kid, looking to get big value from casting spells outside of his hand. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and consider using our TCG Player affiliate link to support the channel below. Without making you wait, Mark wins a die roll and starts us off. Mark draws for turn and plays a land. Beto does the same, dropping a Myriad Landscape. I draw and play a tap land. Bardo draws and also plays a tap land, but gains 1 life.
I never said pass. I never said pass, bro. Bello just went, bro. Draw for second turn. One thing about Mark. Force.
He taps the Mana Vault along with the land to cast Hedron Archive. He then uses it immediately to cast a Cultivate, passing the turn and searching for some lands. Beto untaps and plays an Ancient Tomb, taking 2 damage to use it and crack his Myriad Landscape. I play Plains for turn and pass. Bardo untaps and draws. He plays a land and casts an Arcane Signet. Mark untaps for turn 3. He decides to leave the Mana Vault tapped, taking 1 damage. He plays a Forest and then casts his commander, Bello, Bard of the Brambles. He moves to combat and swings his Hedron Archive, that's now a 4/4 with haste and indestructible from Bello for 4 damage at Bardo. It hits and he draws a card. Beto untaps and draws. He drops a Plains and casts a Charcoal Diamond, passing the turn. I draw and play an island for turn. I then pay 3 to cast Decasia's Welcome. Bardo untaps and drops a land. He casts a Kodama's Reach, passing as he searches for lands. On his end step, Mark takes 1 damage to cycle one of his lands. Mark untaps and decides to take 1 damage, leaving his Vault tapped. He plays a mountain and falls with the Path of Discovery. It enters and he gets an Explore trigger, revealing a land and putting it to hand. He moves to combat and declares attackers at Beto and I, but Beto responds with a Swords to Plowshare, exiling his commander and gaining Mark 4 life. We take no damage and move to Beto's turn. Beto drops an absolute bomb with Necropotence. He pays 3 life to exile 3 cards to get on his end step, passing the turn. I draw and feeling a little behind, drop a Caretaker's Talent. I then play a bounce land for turn, returning an island to my hand and passing the Bardo. He draws and plays a land for turn. He then casts his commander, Kellan the Kid, and we move over to Mark.
Kellan the Kid? You're gonna regret doing that, bro.
Mark starts his turn by paying the 4 mana to untap his Vault. He drops a Forest and then casts a much needed Beast Within, targeting Beto's Necropotence. Beto plays it safe and responds by paying another 3 life, exiling 3 cards that he'll get on his next end step. Beto makes his 3/3 beast and we move to his turn. Beto untaps and again is back to drawing 1 card on his draw step. Losing 2 life from his tomb, he casts a strong Whip of Erebos, giving his creatures lifelink. He falls with an Nihili Spellbomb. Moving to combat, he attacks me for 3, gaining 3 in the process. I take it and we move on to my turn. I draw and, searching for a red source, pay to cast a Selfless Spirit, drawing a card on the ETB. I draw into a much needed command tower and play it for turn. I follow up with my commander, Zinnia, Valley's Voice. Feeling better with my board state, I pass. Bardo draws a card and casts Make Your Own Luck. He exiles a Gorian Wise Mentor that is plotted and can be played for free next turn. He moves to combat and hits Mark for 3 commander with Kellan. Mark draws and plays a Rootbound Crag. He then casts a strong Decimate. I respond by sacking my Selfless Spirit, giving my commander indestructible. Margit targets to destroy my Azorius Chancery, Kellan the Kid, and Beto's Whip and Spellbomb.
That was a good one. Pretty spread out, bro. Pretty spread out.
Yeah.
You took away 2 lands from me.
You got
I mean,
3
I
lands.
have to try to cast my commander, right?
Yeah.
Alright. Commander. Out on the field, Bello, Bard of the Brambles.
With his commander now out, Mark turns all his 4 CMC artifacts and enchantments into some meaty creatures. He also gets a Discover trigger, putting the card to the bin and giving Bello a counter. Moving to combat, Mark swings his Path of Ancestry at Bardo for 4. He takes a damage and Mark gets to draw a card. He passes and we move on to Beto. He starts his turn by taking 2 damage from his tomb to cast a Fellwar Stone. He follows up with his commander, Zoraline Cosmos Caller. It enters and Beto pays a 2 mana and life to return his Divine Presence to the battlefield, nullifying all damage 4 and above to 3. For my turn, I draw and desperately drop an island. I then cast Kedis Emberclaw Familiar, pumping my commander's power by 1. I also draw a card from the creature entering. Feeling like I need to send a message about hitting my land, I move to combat and swing 2 damage at Mark. It hits and also deals another 2 damage to Beto and Bardo. I pass and Bardo moves to untap. With his board feeling a little lonely, he recasts Kellan the Kid, paying the extra 2. He then casts his plotted Gorian Wise Mentor for free. Kellan triggers and Bardo drops a Doc Arlock Grizzled Genius to the field, amassing an instant board. He passes and we move to turn 7. Mark draws and plays a Buried Ruin for turn. Feeling aggressive, he moves straight into combat and swings his 4/4 path at Bardo and his commander at Bello. After declaring attacks, Bardo decides to respond by casting the adventure portion of Horn-Loch Whale, Lagoon Breach. Bardo bounces Mark's path to the bottom of his deck and more notably his commander to the top. No damage is dealt and we move to Mark's second main phase.
You get 6 mana, guess which card?
Warstone Surge.
Whipton Hydra. So I'm gonna kill offline creatures.
Damn, that's crazy.
Offline creatures.
Damn, that's my commander, bro. That's pretty good.
Alright, just so you guys remember that I killed every commander on the board.
Mark eats away at our commanders with a huge Whip-Tongue Hydra. He decides to end his turn, keeping his Hedron Archive available in case he needs to draw his commander to hand. Bello drops a Plains for turn and moves directly to combat. He swings his 3/3 at me for 3 damage. On his second main phase, he loses another 2 from his tomb to cast a Decree of Pain.
2, 3, 4 cards.
The board is wiped and Bello draws a total of 5 cards. He passes the turn as he decides what he wants to discard down to. I untap, draw, and play a land. I recast my commander, paying the tax and getting the draw when it enters. With no mana left, I pass. Bardo draws and casts a Tatiova Benthic Druid. He then drops a tap land for turn, gaining a life and drawing a card from his new creature. With nothing much to do, he passes. Mark draws for turn, putting his commander back to hand and instantly recasting Bello. He follows up with a banger of an enchantment, Nature's Will. Mark moves to combat and swings the 4/4 Nature's Will at Bello.
Path to exile. Go get yourself a land.
Before damage, Bello responds with a sneaky path to exile, targeting Mark's Bello. Mark's commander is exiled and he gets a land and the Nature's Will is removed from combat since it's no longer a creature. Mark plays a land and passes the turn. Bello untaps and adds another card to his already full hand. He plays a land and drops yet another strong enchantment, Smothering Tithe. He then casts a Bastion Protector, getting ready to juice up his commander with Indestructible when it comes back to the field. He passes over to me and I draw. I decide not to pay the Smothering tax and move to play a land for turn while Bello makes a treasure.
Alright, I'm already behind on lands anyways. I feel like everyone's ramping. I'm just gonna make everyone's spells cost 1 less to cast.
I fall with the Blade Grift prototype, hoping to use it for some political gains. Moving to combat, I swing 1 flying with my commander at Bello who takes the damage like a champ. Bardo draws and plays another tap land for turn. He gains 1 life and draws a card. He doesn't pay Bello's Smothering Tithe triggers, allowing him to make some more treasures. It's safe to say that we all decide to opt out on paying the triggers and dealing with the enchantment the way we know best, player removal. Bardo then casts the Fertile Footsteps portion of Beanstalk Giant, getting a basic to the field untapped, gaining him a life and card and Bello another treasure. The Horn-Locked Whale he had in exile is ready to quit adventuring around and makes its way to the battlefield. Bardo passes and we move to turn 9. Mark draws for turn and recasts Bello once again. Moving directly to combat, he swings both creatures at Bello for 4 damage.
Oh, that's worth. Yeah. Okay, now it's worth it. They get it to Fairy's Protection.
Oh my god, bro.
For the 3rd time in a row, Mark's combat is nullified as Bello ceases to exist with Teferi's Protection. Missing out on the card draw, Mark casts a Shamanic Revelation, drawing 3 cards and gaining 8 life. Bello misses out on some treasure since he decided to dip though. Mark then plays a land for turn and casts a Reduced Solemn Simulacrum, tutoring a basic to the field tapped and passing. Bello and his permanents phase back into existence and he draws a card. He plays an Exotic Orchid for turn and casts his commander again, paying the 2 mana but forgetting to pay the 2 life to bring out Banishing Light from his graveyard. He exiles my Griffin under the enchantment and casts a Cabal Council of Allocation, hoping to cash in on some life gain. He protects his commander with the Kaya's Ghost form. Moving to combat, he opts to hit me for another 3 damage. I untap and draw. I decide to make a deal with Mark, opting not to remove his commander if he doesn't swing any damage my way. We agree and I cast a nice Curse of the Swine, losing 2 life and gaining Bello 2 life from his Cabal trigger. I decide to exile Bello's Cabal, his commander, and Bardo's Tatiova, hoping to start their life gain and card draw. Bello's commander lives because of his ghost form and makes 2 2/2 boards, while Bardo makes 1.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
I follow with the reduced Empyrean Eagle, pumping my flyers by 1. When it enters, I draw a card from my enchantment and move to combat to swing 2 damage Mark's way.
Hit you, I do.
I swing and this fool never ceases.
For Bartle's turn, he drops a banger with Chamil the Inner Sun, making his spells uncounterable. He has just enough with my cost reduction to cast his commander, Kellan the Kid. Moving to his end step, he discovers 5 and gets to cast a Cultivate, putting a land to the field and 1 to hand. Mark starts turn 10 by untapping his mana vault and drawing a card. He pays 3 mana for a Thran Dynamo. He immediately uses it to cast a Teapot Slinger. But not feeling like he drew enough cards this turn, he drops to the board a Guthama All Devouring. Mark moves to combat and swings out at Bardo with his 3 4/4 creatures. On attack, he opts to let all of his creatures fight Guthama. Each instance of damage is reduced to 3 because of Bethel's enchantment, but Mark still gets to draw 9 cards, killing the big worm. Bardo blocks one of the creatures but still takes a total of 6 reduced damage. Mark gets to draw 2 cards with Bello and untaps all his lands because of Nature's Will, essentially getting a second turn with all the card draw and mana to play them. He starts his second main phase with the Primeval Bounty. Next up is even more card draw with Greater Good. On the cast, he adds 3 counters to his Bello. Next up is Domri, Anarch of Bolas, getting another 3 counters to Bello. He downticks his Planeswalker to have his roided out commander fight Bethel's Bastion Protector, killing it and having Bethel's Zoraline lose indestructible. Still not done, he casts a Burnished Heart, creating a 3/3 token. He immediately kills the Burnished Heart to search for 2 basics to the field and shortcuts by casting a Nature's Lore, juicing up his Teapot Slinger with 3 counters. Mark goes to grab 3 lands and gains 9 life from the Primeval Bounty. We move on to Bethel's turn as Mark goes to search. Bethel casts a Well of Lost Dreams. Bethel moves to combat and swings his Vigilant Commander at Mark's Domri, getting an attack trigger. He pays it 2 mana and 2 life to bring back his Necropotence. Bethel also gains a life from attacking, allowing him to pay 1 mana to draw a card from the Well of Lost Dreams. In his second main phase, he pays 1 mana to cast a Font of Agonies. Bethel then decides to pay 7 life with Necropotence to exile 7 cards that he'll get on his end step. This also gives the Font of Agonies 7 blood counters. He moves to end step, exiling the cards he discards. I draw for turn and again miss out on finding a land. I cast a Stormscape Familiar, paying the Offspring cost to make a second copy of it. On ETB and creation of the token, I get to draw a total of 2 cards. I follow up with a Shrike Force, using the cost reduction to pay the Offspring. It enters along with a token copy. I finally drop another land for turn. I move to combat and we momentarily forget that Bethel's enchantment reduces damage to 3 as I swing my commander at Mark for 6 damage, which would really be 3, but we catch this mistake later on. I pass and we move on to Bardo. He draws and casts a massive Beanstalk Giant from exile. When he does, he gets a Kellan trigger and stays on theme by dropping a Raised by Giants, making his commander a 10/10 that deals 3 damage.
Alright, but I want to kill you, bro. You're annoying.
Chill.
3.
Bardo then casts a monstrous Vortex. Moving to combat, he sinks his 10/10 commander at Mark for 3 damage, gaining 3 life and going to his end step where he discovers a Fabricate, tutoring the key to the vault to his hand. Mark draws to start off a crazy turn. He takes a damage from leaving his vault untapped. He casts a Path of Discovery, triggering his bounty to give another creature 3 counters that he adds to the teapot. The path enters and he discovers a land to his hand. He then casts Raga Draga, Gorgut's boss, pumping his creatures and making a 3/3. He explores a Garruk's Uprising to the top and leaves it there, giving the Gorgut's boss a counter. He then decides he wants to draw the Garruk's Uprising, so he sacks his soul into Greater Good, drawing 1 card from the creature dying and then another 4 as he discards 3 of them from Greater Good. He then casts a powerful Warstorm Surge, passing out another 3 counters. Bethel responds by sacking 2 treasures and removing 4 counters from his enchantment to destroy Mark's commander. Mark then responds by sacking it to Greater Good, drawing another 9 cards and then discarding 3. Mark also expended 4 this turn by spending 4 mana to cast spells, so his Teapot Slinger deals 2 damage to the rest of us. Bethel responds to the expend 4 by paying 1 life and exiling a card with Necropotence, gaining a blood counter on his Font of Agony. Mark moves on and casts a Nature's Claim, trying to remove the Font of Agonies. Bethel then responds again, paying another 4 life with Necropotence and removing 8 counters to destroy both copies of my Stormscape Familiar, nullifying the 4 life gain from the Nature's Claim. Still pumping out cards, Mark casts a Nautiloid Ship, exiling Bethel's graveyard and giving another creature 3 counters. We also forget that the beast Mark made earlier were supposed to explore, so one gets a counter and the other stays at 3/3 but brings a land to Mark's hand. Next up is a Starstorm, X equaling 3, dealing 3 damage to the creatures on board. Mark wipes a big portion of the board and heads into combat. He decides to swing his 2 big creatures at Betho for 3 damage each, but Betho has an answer with Thrilling Encore. He returns to field all creatures that died this turn. With an instant board, Betho blocks with his commander that's now a 4/4 because of my birdie, but not liking that he'll have all the flying, I respond before damage with Rapid Hybridization, destroying the flyer that's pumping Betho's commander. We move to damage and Betho takes 3 and his commander dies. After already doing so much to the board, Mark gets to untap his lands with Nature's Will. He starts his second main phase with Girapur Orrery, letting us play extra lands and giving a creature 3 counters. We also remember that when Mark played his land for turn, he was supposed to gain 3 life. For Mark's second land, he drops a Strip Mine, gaining another 3 life. Combustible Gearhulk makes his way to the field and Mark gets to make another 3/3. He targets Betho for the ETB, and not wanting to lose any life, Betho lets Mark draw his cards. Then Mark targets his 2 Warstorm Surge triggers at Betho, making him lose 3 life twice. Mark also explores, giving his 2 creatures a counter. He then casts a Rahada here to Keld, making it 3/3 and dealing another 5 total damage to Betho. Mark then casts another creature, making it 3/3 that kills Betho from the Warstorm Surge and deals 1 damage to me. When Betho dies, my Blade Griffin prototype returns to the field. Mark then casts Pyroswipe Hawk, dealing 7 damage to me after making another token as he forgets a couple Explore triggers. Finally out of mana, he passes. For my turn, I move straight to combat and swing my Griffin at Bardo, trying to have him remove the Warstorm Surge, but Mark won't go down silently as he casts a Fog, preventing all combat damage and handing out another 3 counter. In my second main phase, I play a Skycat Sovereign and draw a card. I then play a Kanji Sky Warden and have to pass over to Bardo. For his turn, Bardo plays the Key to the Vault and equips it to his commander, who is notably a 10/10 flyer at the moment. He moves to combat and swings his 2 flyers at Mark, along with his 13/13 Beanstalk. Mark decides he wants to block a lot of the damage, crewing up his ship to turn it into a flying creature and double blocking Bardo's commander. He also throws 4 creatures in front of the Beanstalk and the Gearhulk at the Whale. After blockers is declared, Bardo casts the Razor Grass Ambush, dealing 3 damage to one of Mark's flyers, though they both die when they move damage. A lot of creatures die, but the rest are wiped as Bardo casts the Adventure side of Realm Cloak Giant. However, Mark's creatures will not die for nothing. He sacks them to his greater good to draw a ton of cards while discarding 3 for each. With the end near, we move on to Mark's turn. Mark loses a life from his vault and quickly casts his commander. He is eager to win and misses some triggers, but the writing is already on the walls. He deals 3 damage to me and then drops a Panharmonicon, dealing another 4 damage to me. He then drops a Gilded Lotus, dealing 8 damage to me. He finally ends me by casting a Joroira's Familiar, dealing 4 damage to me and another 10 to Bardo since he gets to make a 3/3 from the creature. He drops a Neverhall's Disc, dealing 8 damage to Bardo. He moves to combat and completely swings out, killing Bardo and getting a much deserved win.
Ah, no
You got
way.
it.
It was the next card.
You got it, Marky Mark.
The next fucking
Thank you,
card.
bro.
I'm just looking for that shit.
Honestly, bro, I'm gonna give it to that Decimate, bro. Slowed you down. Slowed Bello down.
That wraps up today's insane game. Bello has to be one of my favorite commanders to drop from Bloom Barrel, and it definitely proved why today. Mark was able to amass an engine of pure strength and strategy, constantly drawing cards and dishing out damage. He makes a statement with the huge W. If you enjoyed the game and want to see more, subscribe and consider using our TCG Player affiliate link below.